Congratulations and welcome students to this, your last day, the wrap up of your part-time weekend course. You've made it so far through lecture and lab. Now it's time for your clinical experience. Normally I would be here with you in person, but today's a day where I'll be out of town, so I'd like you to just follow along in this brief video. Your clinical is going to be at the Mount Washington Care Center, which is at 6900 Beachmont Avenue on the east side of town. The instructor will be your Miss Linda Stoller, your lab instructor, so you'll be very familiar with Miss Linda's style and her ability to convey this clinical effectively to you. And that clinical is going to be Saturday and Sunday, December 6th and 7th. I know you'll have to forgive me for this, but 6-7, that's when it's going to be. Notice that it's 6:45 to 3:30. So your grace period, similar to your labs, which was from 5:15 to 5:30, you have the same 15-minute grace period here. So it is from 6:45 to 7 o'clock. So although 6:46 is technically considered late, 1 minute late, it is not dismissal late, but the point of no return would be 7:01. So please, no matter what you do not be later than that. And as a matter of fact, I would encourage you all to be there early, get there between 6:30 and 6:45. But the clinical does begin promptly at 6:45 and it goes to 3:30. So we're going to be doing 2 full 8-hour days plus a half-hour break. So this is not good. So unlike your labs that were only 5 hours, these are going to be 2 8-hour days. So please be there on time. There are going to be 1 or 2 students possibly that are on standby, and if those students get there on time and you're not, those standby students will get to stay and take your place. So please let these last 2 days go by, in peace and prosperity, so that you don't end up having to be the standby student in a future class. Again, clinical starts promptly at 6:45 on both days. Just some hints, and I'm sure Ms. Stoller has probably covered this with you already. There could be other hints, but briefly, don't park in the visitor parking spots and don't park in the front of the building. With Mount Washington Care Center, park in the employee parking lot. So pull up to the facility. Toward the left, there'll be a garage, and you should park in the parking lot there or in the employee parking lot behind the building. So it would behoove some of you to, in the week that you have between now and clinicals, to maybe do a dry run because at 6:45 it's still going to be kind of darkish, so you don't want to be lost. And this is one of those buildings or one of those campuses that is not like a one-off. It's just not just one building right off the side of the road. I think it has multiple buildings, assisted living, skilled. So it's like kind of a somewhat sprawling multi-acre campus. So you do want to get there, on time. So try to swing by if you can. You don't have to. But those are a few hints that Ms. Stoller has conveyed to me, and I'm subsequently conveying them to you. We're going to be meeting directly at the skilled nursing facility. I know this sounds obvious, but every now and then I'll get a student that'll call me the morning of and say, "Hey, I'm here. Where is everyone?" And I'm like, "Where are you?" And they're like, "Well, I thought we were meeting here at the school and all driving together." I know that sounds crazy, hard to believe, but it's happened before. So remember, we're not meeting here at the school. We're meeting directly at the clinical site. Clinical is basically where you're going to be putting into practice what you learned in the lecture and lab part. In the theoretical knowledge part, you're putting it into a real world practice. So think of it as an internship of sorts, whose nature and focus is characterized by active participation and hands-on work, right? You're going to be assigned certain acuity level residents. You'll have the same residents and partner that you had. You're going to have those same residents and partner on day 2 as you had on day 1 for continuity's sake. You're not going to be shadowing anyone. You're not going to be just walking around observing people. You're actually going to be taking care taking care of patients, taking care of residents, answering call lights. You're going to be walking up and down the nursing unit. It's going to feel like you're almost working a shift. But remember, we're still students. We're still in the learning phase. This is the part where you're actually going to be, taking care of real people. Unlike lab that was limited to just one room, very limited. This is actually walking up and down the unit, answering call lights. So wear some comfortable shoes. Our goal is, of course, safety is always first. Delivering safe, effective patient care, to your residents. Of course, we're going to be learning as students. We're still in the learning phase. We're going to be getting experience, having a little bit of fun too, but in a safe, controlled manner. This could be a potential job site for you. If you find that you like it there and, you would like to work there, pick up an application on your way out, after the second day. And again, make sure you wear some comfortable shoes. You're going to be getting a lot of steps throughout these 2 days next weekend. There will be a pre-conference. That's why we have to start promptly at 6:45. There'll be like a 15-minute sort of pre-conference where Ms. Stoller will pair you up. She'll give you your assignment, kind of go over expectations. She'll hand you a 4-page handout. Page 1 and 4 is for Ms. Stoller to fill out, namely page 1. Page 1, there are some skills check off that she'll be checking off. Do not be alarmed nor bothered by the fact that not all skills might be necessarily checked off. There are some of your residents that don't want you to do certain things on them. So it doesn't necessarily have to have a check mark on all those skills, but we're going to try to check as many off safely as we can to give you an exposure to as many different skills. Now, you're going to be doing skills that you might not have done in lab, right? You might be exposed to the Hoyer lift or do things, this is kind of your real world experience versus the way that the skills are done in lab for state testing. So you're going to sort of in your mind have to reconcile this sort of theoretical steps, that you did for these skills in lab versus how you deliver them in a real world way, just to give you some balance on perspective, right? So you're going to get paired up, go over your assignment, get a, groundwork or, just sort of a, layout of where the linens might be. So Ms. Stoller is going to orient you to the facility and what to expect. Please do bring with you some paper and pencil. If you can go to Walmart and get one of those cute little rectangular notebooks with a tiny little spiral, something that could fit neatly into your scrub top pocket, and a pencil. Or you can cut out some paper. It doesn't have to be that little notebook. But the point is bring something to write with, something to write on, because during that pre-conference, you're going to be paired up. For example, Susie and John, you're going to be with Mr. Smith in room 387, bed B. Careful, he has some left-sided weakness. So when you're ambulating him or transferring him, be careful he doesn't fall. So you're going to want to write, Smith 387 bed B, left-sided weakness. Be careful also that, when you're feeding him, he has some swallow precautions. We don't want him to choke. Swallow precautions, good note to make. Recording some INOs, some pulse and respiration. So you'll go over all those expectations in the pre-conference. And then in the post-conference at the end of day 2, the last 20 minutes, half hour or so, on the other 2 pages, so Ms. Stoller will fill out page 1 with the skills, check out page 4 with your satisfactory, unsatisfactory, pass or fail having been circled, right? Make sure you print your name on the top of all 4 of those pages, but you are going to be filling out page 2 and 3, and they contain questions 1 through 18 on page 2, then questions 19 through 32 on page 3, and these are questions to help you kind of make connections between what you learned in the theory part and the knowledge part, in the lecture and lab part, with what you experienced at clinical. So for example, one of the questions might say something like, cite 2 examples of team nursing that you observed throughout your clinicals, just something of that sort. These are not questions that involve like an examination. These are not exam, or these are not graded questions. So it's not like a practicum of any sort, right? They're just questions to help engage you, so you sort of are thoughtful and make some of these, draw some of these connections, right? So remember, again, clinical is just pass, fail. as long as nothing extreme happens, and I could count in very rare circumstances has that happened, right? Like examples like being unsafe. I remember a clinical instructor one time failed a couple of students after they dropped their resident. I know that sounds like incredible, incredulous, but she actually didn't fail them for dropping their resident. She failed them for not using the gate belt when transferring their resident. She just felt that was so egregious a safety violation that there was just no excuse for that, right? So lesson to be learned there is always use a gate belt. We don't know these residents, right? Remember, safety is first. Your safety, your resident's safety. So no matter how ambulatory or these residents may seem to you, we don't know them. So they might be having a good day, a not so good day. So always use a gate belt, right? So something, involving some extreme unsafe situation that she just felt that the student should have known better. They've always were taught gate belt. They should have been using gate belt. So they didn't in that particular situation. Insubordination, which happens very rarely. I mean, I don't think we have to worry about that. What really happens more than anything else is that students bring their devices into the building. So like the lab scenarios where you were asked to leave your cell phones in the lab, I'm sure some of you might have taken them in with you or whatever, and Ms. Stoller didn't really hold you, too accountable. Maybe she did, but at the clinical site, however, if you're seen with your cell phones on you, you will be categorically dismissed. So please, this is a rule of the facility. We have a signed 12-page contract agreement with them, and one of the clauses says students may not bring any electronic devices into the building. So leave your cell phones, your smart watches in your car. You'll get a half-hour break, and you can get on those and text and call all you want. Those of you who get an Uber or take a Lyft or someone drops you off, ask a fellow classmate to keep those devices in their cars for you. So again, I repeat, do not bring any electronic devices into the building, right? That is the reason why most students would, when they get dismissed, that's why they get dismissed for these devices. Otherwise, you're highly likely to pass clinical. That's assuming, of course, that you pass the lecture and lab portions, which brings me to my next slide. Recall from orientation the slides that mention the 4 things that you need in order to go to clinicals. So they started off with attendance, right? So I'm going to classify these as either a check mark, if we're all good on them, right, as a whole, an X, the X will be highlighted if we're not, and a question mark will be highlighted in red if it's yet to be determined. So TBD, we're not sure yet. So in the case of attendance, it would be an X, because unfortunately, without mentioning anyone by name, obviously, not everyone has finished all 4 labs. You have to have completed all 4 labs, all 20 hours of your labs in order to go to clinical. So some of you might have a lab or 2 to make up. I can think of at least one case where that's the case. But if you have all yours, you're fine. I'm saying as a whole, we all don't have all our hours in as of yet, right? And if you have any trouble with any of your in and outs, I will be, downloading those hours and submitting those. So if there's anything quirky that happened, I can go in and kind of tweak that and fine tune it. So just let Ms. Stoller know, who will then let me know. So that's number 1, attendance, right? These are the 4 things you need in order to go to clinicals that we had covered at orientation. Number 2 is the whole issue of grades. And this one is going to be a question mark. Why? Because we still have outstanding points. Not everything has been submitted yet, right? Remember, your overall cum, and I know you guys know this very well, in order to pass the course is correct, 75%. So you have to get a minimum of 75% in order to pass the course, in order to be eligible to go to clinical, in order to get a certificate of completion, right? So this part has yet to be determined, because the grades will be finalized and reported to Canvas as of noon tomorrow, I want to say, right? We might have to wait till Tuesday, but I would say Monday, tomorrow will be when this will be reported, right? So, we validate the results, we check them, we double check them for accuracy. So please check your overall cumulative average prior to attending your clinical. I did notice that on the list, again, without mentioning anyone's name, there might be one or two students that are kind of on the cusp of that 75 line, right? Slightly above, slightly below. And if you do happen to be one of those students, don't despair, right? Because you still have a lot of outstanding points that are going to help you achieve that 75% cutoff. Namely, number one is the discussion board that was due this morning at 8 a.m. Historically, this discussion board is pretty straightforward, and the scores on it are relatively high, which will boost your overall cum up. Anyone who did not turn in DB7 is not eligible to take this final today, so unfortunately, you'll be leaving after the wrap up, because if you didn't do it, it would behoove you not to take the exam, because it's going to cover the things that you haven't turned in yet. So you'll have to, do it at a later date. Number two, that will help you achieve the 75% cutoff if you're on the cusp there, is the workbook, which was also due today at 8 o'clock. At 8 a.m. Historically, the workbook has a really high average, somewhere between 95 to 98. Hopefully you all turned in your workbook as you should have this morning at 8 o'clock, which will help boost your score up, right? The final exam, we're going to be doing that here shortly. I think you'll all be very pleasantly surprised when it comes to this. Students tend to report, at least anecdotally, that the final is, easier than the midterm. So I think you guys will agree. The numbers do support that opinion. The final scores are generally higher by 8 to 12 points on average than the midterm average score. So if you got a 70-something on the midterm, you'll probably be in the 80s on this final. If you got an 80-something on the midterm, you'll probably be in the 90s on this final. So just relax. I think you're all going to leave with a really big smile on your faces, and I want to wish you all the best of luck on this final. You're going to be very happy about this, I promise, right? Lab participation, assuming you've done all your labs and you brought what you were supposed to from home, and you didn't dismiss yourself from the labs excessively, you should get full marks here, which, it's a small but significant 2.22% of your overall score, so that can help students that are kind of right there on the cusp, right? So again, assuming that you did everything correctly and on time, typically student performance going into the final, and this is not data from your group, but typically students are in the 85 and higher. They're in the safe range. The students that I'm, kind of alluding to in those previous slides are the ones that are right there on the cusp, slightly above, slightly below that 75 pass-fail line. So hopefully those four things that we just mentioned will boost you up into that safe zone. All of you are doing very well in this class. I really want to commend all of you. You're outstanding students. Everyone seems as though they took this course very seriously, and the grades and the average is reflecting that. And I do want to give kudos to all of you as a whole for doing so. But I also want to give special recognition to the top students going into the final exam. And this might have changed like as of today, but probably not. So in ascending order, the student that's in third place is at 91.8% is Mahogany Watkins. Congratulations, Mahogany, doing an excellent job, sitting at 91.18 currently. And in second place, not far behind Mahogany, Rush. Good job, Rush. Round of applause if Rush is with us today. I'm not sure if he is or not, but great job there. And the student that's in, and you guys can tell how far apart, we're talking about a difference of 1% between each of these top students. These are phenomenal students doing phenomenally well. But the one in first place is Madeline Z. Hey, good job, Maddie. A round of applause for Maddie. So listen, excellent job to all of you as a group. Just, you guys are all doing great, but I just thought I'd give special recognition to those top students. And then as we progress through the last four things, number 3 is the uploads. And this is kind of disappointing to see that not everyone turned in. Your deadline, according to the calendar, was November 22nd at 12 p.m. You should have at least had your ID, your social, and your TB test. If you did not submit those things, you are unlikely to be going to this clinical next weekend, right? So you can call the office. I usually speak to students one-on-one after the final today, but since Ms. Stoller will be proctoring this for you today, she doesn't know where you guys stand on this, so just call the office and they'll probably be reaching out to you Monday if you haven't already done so to see what the holdup is. But you will not be attending this clinical next weekend if you missed that deadline. You're still going to the clinical, so don't get me wrong, you're still going to clinical, but you're just not going with this group, or you're not going to be going with this round. You'll have to go with a future clinical. Now, the only thing that should be holding this up is the issue of the COVID. And remember, you cannot get the COVID test until tomorrow. So Monday, December 1st will be the earliest you can get your COVID, and then Friday, December 5th, the day prior to the clinical would be the last day, right? So really the COVID should be the only thing holding everybody up at this point. Remember, we're administering the COVID today. If you haven't already gotten it today, our fee is a very nominal fee of $25. You don't have to get it from us. If you can go to your primary care physician's office or CVS or Walgreens, Urgent Care, a Kroger Clinic, Minute Clinic, wherever you want to go. And I just want to remind you that, again, this is not new information, but notice that on the course schedule that I presented to you, it says right there, November 22nd, when you guys turned in module 3 and 4, that when you came in for lab 1, there was a deadline at noon that day. So that was your last chance to upload those documents. Again, it's not necessarily your last chance. If you didn't do it, please do it, because you are going to clinical, but at a future date. Okay, then the last thing is balances. This should be very straightforward. This should not be an issue at this point. You guys all should have a zero balance as of today, and I am recording this a little bit earlier. Not everyone has a zero balance, so maybe this is in fact going to be a check by the time today has rolled around, but today's the last day, so you need to make payment either on your student account online, or you can't really call it in. You can call it in tomorrow, I guess. So although technically you shouldn't be taking the final unless you have a zero balance, we'll let everybody take the final today, but you need to be able to take care of that balance prior to next weekend's clinical. So those are the 4 things that we had discussed that you need to have in place in order to go to clinical next weekend. There will be an evaluation sent to you tomorrow, right? It's going to come from Sarah. It's going to be in the form of a Google form. It's going to say, the subject line is going to read, "We want your opinion," so please check your spam or bulk mail folders. It tends to go in your junk mail, and you must submit this 2-part evaluation prior to attending your clinical. So please make sure you do this. This is not optional. Part 1 is an instructor eval, so make sure you select your original start date. I think you guys all started on, if I'm not mistaken, November 8th is when the start date of this was, so choose November 8th. If you're in this group doing the wrap-up today, but you started with a different class, make sure you choose your original start date, right? Regardless of when that was. And then start off with Miss Sandra or Miss Linda. It doesn't matter who you start off with. Remember, Miss Sandra was the instructor giving you your lectures in the modules, in those 7 modules on Canvas, and obviously Miss Stoller was the in-person lab instructor. So you'll read the statement once you've selected the instructor you want to start off with. You'll read the statement pertaining to that instructor, right? And you'll slide the ball to the left or right below that statement, or click the bubble, the scale. There'll be a scale from 1 to 10, and you'll select the number depending on the degree to which you agree or disagree with that statement, right? So for example, I felt this instructor demonstrated skills adequately in lab. So for Miss Sandra, that statement would be neutral because she wasn't your lab instructor. So you put that one at 5 for her, but you'd put it, you'd move it on whichever side of 5 you feel, for Ms. Stoller when you go to review, when you go to evaluate her. So again, there are going to be several statements, You're going to read the statement and then slide on the scale below. And then answer yes when you get to the question, did you have any other instructor for this course? Don't say no, say yes. So it'll go back to the beginning. You select the other instructor. So if you started off with Miss Sandra, you'll select Miss Linda next time around. You'll read the same statements and slide on the scale below depending on the degree to which you agree or disagree with the statement above. That's part one. Part two of the eval, and it is a two-part eval, both parts are required, is the overall course evaluation. So read the statement pertaining to the course. For example, I felt this course prepared me adequately to take the state board exam. Slide on the scale below depending on the degree to which you agree or disagree with that statement. On this part, you can write comments if you wish. What worked for you? What did you like best? What could have been better? Remember that both of these parts are completely anonymous. It only takes a few minutes to do, so please do that prior to attending your clinical, and these will be sent out by Sarah sometime tomorrow, and they have to be done prior to next weekend. So try to get that out of the way. And then after you do your clinical, there'll be a similar but different clinical evaluation. This time the statement pertaining to the clinical experience. For example, I felt the staff was very helpful at this clinical site. Again, read the statement, slide on the scale below depending on the degree to which you agree or disagree with the statement. You must do this in order to get a copy of your certificate sent to you the Wednesday following the clinical, right? And you must do the course evaluation along with the instructor evaluation in order to get your name on the roster to go to clinical. So you must do both of these evaluations. So please make sure you do them both. Remember, both of them are completely anonymous. You'll probably be getting a call from the Columbus office tomorrow or Tuesday, and the conversation will go something like, congratulations, you passed, reminder to do your course evaluation. Yes, I did. Great, no problem, good job. The other conversation might be, sorry, you didn't pass. If you happen to be one of those one or two that fell slightly below, and so these are your options. Just to discuss this briefly, we can discuss it again, over the phone. So please make sure you all answer your calls tomorrow from the 614 number. It's not going to be a random marketing call. It's going to be us calling you, either myself, Sarah, or Carson, or Sue. Just confirming your ability to go to clinical. So if you're in the other group, and I hope no one is, but your options are basically, if you got at least a 65% overall cum, but you got below 75, you do get one additional attempt at repeating the course. You'll be in an alternate version of the course, right, whereby everything will be, all the assessments will be similar but different. So there'll be seven alternate quizzes, 7 alternate modules. The modules will have different scenarios, so there's not going to be, Mr. Ali, who's the Muslim, who, doesn't want the female aide to give him a bed bath. There'll be 7 alternate quizzes, an alternate midterm, and an alternate final. The only thing that will be the same, should you choose to repeat the course here at Aaliyah, will be the 403 workbook questions, right? So the course will be, and you do have to repeat everything all over again. I get this question all the time. Do I have to do the labs? Yes, you have to repeat the course all over again. The 4 labs, all 7 modules, but they won't be exactly the same, right? And you will have to pay the tuition portion only. We're going to waive the seat fee and the book fees and all that. So it will be a little cheaper the second time around, right? So if you choose to take the course with us, you're more than welcome, as long as you got at least a 65 or higher. And if you choose not to do it with us, my advice is don't give up. Stay positive. I'm sure you're all very capable, smart individuals, but sometimes, failure happens in our pathway to success. So don't fret. Don't, just, pick yourself up, brush yourself off, and keep moving forward. Whatever professional goals you have, continue to pursue those. Whatever academic goals you have, to go to nursing school or, LP and RN, keep those goals, alive, right? You got this, right? You're a smart individual. You're very capable, but maybe you just had too much going on. You're working a lot of hours and you were exhausted. Maybe you've never taken an online course before. It's okay. So you're more than welcome to come back, again, and take it with us. But if this is not your proper environment online, then go to another school, take it there, but just keep moving forward. Don't give up. Keep your dreams and goals alive, okay? Again, don't be late to your clinical. Remember, clinical starts at what time? Yep, 6:45, not 7, 6:45, right? You will be considered late if you arrive any time after 7 o'clock. Remember, again, we discussed this in detail, but just as a recap, no cell phones, no electronic devices, that includes any smart watches, are permitted in the building. Leave them in your car. Uber, Lyft drivers, let your classmates hold them for you in their vehicles. Remember, you're under the direct supervision of your clinical instructor. If anyone asks you to do anything, hey, can you help me with this, resident, they're a 2-person lift, just let that person know, hey, I'd love to help you. So in a nice, polite way, just let them know you're a student. Hey, I just need to okay this with my instructor. I'd love to help you, but do not take any sort of, orders or, directives from anyone else except your clinical instructor, right? So always run it by her. Continuing, we're going to meet obviously in the main lobby area. Keep all your personal items with you in your car because the room that we're going to be meeting in is not secure. So leave all your valuables in your car. Obviously, lock your car door. Don't leave them in plain sight. But the room we're meeting in is not going to be secure. You are going to get 1 30-minute lunch break, so bring a lunch with you. I would not leave the clinical site. There is a break room in there, so bring your own lunch. Ms. Stoller will probably tell you if they sell food or offer food to students, but I would not leave the campus of the facility, right? Because if you come back late from lunch, you're not going to be permitted to stay for the second half of your lunch after your break if you come back late. So you can go out to your car, but I wouldn't drive off. Again, bring paper and pencil for note-taking, recording INOs, respirations, pulses, etc. Look professional. Be certain your uniform is clean and laundered for both clinical days. White shoes, and please avoid wearing perfumes, colognes, and scented lotions or oils. You can have allergic reactions to your residents. Always wear scent neutral, fragrant or things like deodorant or whatever, right? Just so we avoid these the possibility of any allergic reactions. Make absolutely certain you wear your ALEA student ID badge, right? And if you need it, please call the office and we can mail it to you. We still have some time, but this is a deal breaker. No one will be permitted into the clinical site without their student issued ID. That contract I told you we had an agreement with, one of the clauses says that students must wear and display at all times while on the clinical site school issued ID, right? It has to be your school ID. So hopefully all of you have that. Please let Ms. Stoller know or call the office and let them know if we need to reprint that. We'll have to expedite it to you, but you need that, right? Your mechanical watch, not your smart watch. You should have that too. A watch that has an analog sweeping hand or ticking hand, right? Not having a watch will not prevent you from going to clinical, but it's always good to have one for your vital signs, right? But not having a student ID badge will prevent you from going to clinical, right? So make sure you have that. Don't chew gum while on the clinical site. It's just not professional. The site does not want us to wear anything over our uniform, such as hoodies, sweaters, jackets, or pullovers. So if you're cold, please layer up. I don't know how they're going to keep their climate at this facility. Maybe it's a little warm, maybe it's a little cool, but I want you to layer up, long sleeve, t-shirt, uniform, so you have 2 or 3 layers on. I don't want you to be freezing throughout your clinical. If you get too warm, you can always take off a layer or 2, but the opposite is going to be difficult. So they don't want us to wear anything over our uniforms. They want to be able to spot a student from an employee from really far away in case the state is in the building, in a survey situation, so that they don't ask students any questions in the case of a survey. And remember from the clinical, I just want to refresh your memories on this. Hair longer than shoulder length needs to be tied back. There will be a nail check. Nails can't be longer than 1/8 of an inch. Maybe Ms. Stoller was a little lenient on you for lab, but during clinicals, this is going to be a deal breaker. So please make sure you cut your nails down. Remember, 1/8 of an inch is 1/2 of a quarter. It's really short. So any acrylics, nails, gel, all that stuff needs to be removed or cut down. Any tattoos on your arm up until your wrist need to be covered. So anything up to here, anything below your wrist does not have to be covered. So if the tattoo's on your hand or on your fingers, don't worry about hiding it. And then anything below the décolletage area, you know, of your collarbone, anything below that area also needs to be covered with a t-shirt. Anything above that area on your neck or on your face does not need to be covered. Remember, any piercing that you might have, you know, on your nose or septum or lip or tongue or dimple piercing, if you don't feel like taking those off, you can always wear a mask, but anything on your brow, any dermals, industrials, gauges in your ears do need to be removed. And remember, no jewelry, including rings, necklaces, bracelets, or earrings, should be worn at any time during the clinical. And just as a reminder, remember what an 1/8 of an inch looks like. You know, that center one is like the perfect length, that's 1/8 of an inch. The one to the right is probably a little bit longer on the thumb, you know, it's probably maximum 1/8 of an inch. And then the 3 X's are definitely too long, the 3 red X's, and the green check there is probably kind of like, you know, pushing the maximum as well. So try to shoot for that middle length right there on the pinky, right? For all of your fingers. Recall that the knowledge part, remember your state exam has 2 parts. The knowledge part is 79 multiple choice questions. You have 90 minutes in which to complete that. You have to have an overall passing score of 70% or higher. Which is an average of the 12 subject areas. And I've listed the 12 subject areas here again. I gave you these same 12 at the orientation, but if you've forgotten, you can take a quick shot of this slide. Remember, the fee for part 1 is $30, right? And you'll be paying that directly to the testing company, whose website I will remind you of here shortly. Part 2 of the state exam is the manual skills. This is the one where you have the patient actor and the observer who's looking over your shoulder, checking you off. Again, hopefully you all practiced all 21 skills. They're going to randomly select 3 or 4. You're going to have 35 minutes in which to complete this test. There's only one situation where you can exceed the 35 minutes. If you're on your second to last skill, so your third skill, if you have 4 skills, or on your second skill and you have 3 skills, and let's say you only have like 10 seconds left and you just finished your penultimate skill and you haven't started your last skill, as long as you start the first step of your last skill prior to that 35 minutes running out, they will let you exceed the 35-minute maximum, right? As far as I know, maybe they've changed the rules on that, but please read the rules in your white book, and I think that rule still applies. So they'll let you exceed that. I don't think there's any limit they can cap it at, but they'll let you go over the 35 minutes as long as you start step 1 of the last skills. So those of you who are a little bit slower on your steps, make sure you pace yourself so you don't run out of time. Remember, all 3 or 4 skills you must get an 80% or higher on all 3 or 4 skills. This part does not, unlike part 1, involve an average. So if you get perfect score on let's say you get 4 skills and you get a perfect score on 3 and you get a 79 on your last skill, you fail the entire skill. So you must achieve an 80% or higher on all 4 or on all 4 or all 3 skills in order to pass part 2. For this part, it's a $90 fee, so together 90 and 30 is going to be $120. That fee is paid directly to the testing company, and you must pass both parts within 3 attempts, and you have 24 months in which to do so. Remember, for the knowledge part, I recommended that you all take a full-length practice test. I gave you the website to go to at the orientation. Those of you who don't remember or didn't write that down, just call the office and we can send you this email that has the link. It'll give you, like, you know, the website to go to, and you'll make the $8 you'll make the $9 payment there, and it'll send you a PIN number and a series ID. So just call the office. I highly recommend you all take a full-length practice test. It's only $9. It's probably the best $9 you'll spend. It's an Ohio-specific test. You know, unlike some tests online, a lot of people say, oh, there's a lot of free CNA questions online. Those tend to be generic. This one is Ohio-specific, if you recall from the orientation. So try to do that if you can. And remember, again, if you didn't get this site during the orientation, get it now. Take a picture of this slide or take out your device and bookmark this site, OH. So type in your browser, oh.tmu test. That's Tom, T Tom, M for Mary, U for University, test.com. So oh.tmutest.com. Click on Forgot Password, create your student account. You will not be able to do this until Friday, the Friday following your clinical. So if you finish clinical on the 7th, Monday would be the 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th. So Friday the 12th will be the earliest you can go to this website and register for your state exam. Remember, you have 2 years in which to do so, but the students who want to know what's the earliest I can sign up, it would be Friday the 12th, not before then. So please wait until that day to go to this website, prepay your $120 fee, and you'll see all the test sites will appear throughout the whole state of Ohio. You can pick whichever site you would like to sign up for and schedule that exam, right? We do have a testing site at ALEA in Columbus. So those of you who, if the testing sites in Cincinnati are closed or for some reason you're having a hard time finding one, you're more than welcome to come to the ALEA test site in Columbus. Our test site number there is 1861. So please write that number down. If you choose to take it with us, we'd be happy to have you. The equipment that we use in Cincinnati is the same that we use in Columbus, so you'll be very familiar with all the equipment. It's been shown that students are about 17 to 22% more likely to pass the state exam if they take it at the same school where they took their lab. So I invite you all to come if you have any trouble registering for the test in Cincinnati. Remember the reimbursement form. So Ms. Stoller is going to give you all a 2-page handout. The first page just has all the bullet point summary of everything we talked about, for the clinical guidelines. And the second page is going to be the reimbursement form. Remember, if you work at a skilled nursing facility, a SNF, which is a nursing home on the skilled unit, this is not applicable to assisted living or independent living, AL or IL, but for the skilled units, the Medicare, Medicaid beds, you are eligible for a complete reimbursement for this class. So anything and everything directly related to this course, not just the tuition, not just the books, but your uniform, your shoes, your TB test, your COVID test, your state exam fee, anything and everything directly related to this course. Save all your receipts. I want you to staple it to the form on page 2, fill it out, take a picture for yourself, sign and date that form, and give it to the HR person at your facility. The sooner you get your first nursing home job, the more of that money you'll get back. It is prorated, so if you don't get your first nursing home job, it's prorated for 12 months. So meaning, for example, if you don't get your first nursing home job until 6 months later, then technically the facility is only required to reimburse you 50%. So the sooner you get that first nursing home job, the more of that money that you spent will be reimbursed. Remember, Ohio does follow the 120-day rule. You can work on your certificate alone for up to 120 days prior to taking your state exam. So you guys can actually start applying and start working. You don't have to wait until you take your state exam in the state of Ohio, right? So I would start applying like immediately. This is what the reimbursement form looks like. It has 3 blanks. Fill in your name, the name of the facility in the second blank, and it says graduation date. Your graduation date would be your last day of clinical. In your case, that would be December 7th of 2025 would be the date you put in that third line. And then notice I cite the Ohio Administrative Code section 3701-17-07.1 section 9 section J. So please don't let any nursing home tell you that they don't do that. They have to, and the citation is here on the form, and they can even call the Ohio Department of Health to verify that. There's a phone number on this reimbursement form, so please take advantage of that. You will get every dollar that you spent in this class back. You will end up getting this class for free, guaranteed, no questions asked. No facility should give you any trouble in doing so. When you go to take your state board exam, remember, bring 2 forms of ID, picture ID, non-expired government issued ID that's signed. So this can be your driver's license, your passport, as long as it's U.S. government issued, and your social security card. It must be the original social. They will not take a picture or an image of it or a photocopy of it. So those of you who submitted a copy of some kind of image of yours, but you didn't actually have it, you're gonna have to apply for it, or they're gonna send you home and you're gonna be very upset and you're gonna be out $120 because you're gonna have to repay that fee. So make sure your name matches identically on your ID and your social. That means ladies, if one of them has your married name and the other has your maiden name, you've got to get them changed so they both match, right? So your picture ID and your social. Make sure you're in clinical attire, so whatever you're wearing here, whatever you wore throughout your labs today will suffice for your state exam. And then make sure you're on time. Please don't be late. These proctors for the state exam are notorious for sending students home for being 1 minute late. So I think it recommends in the instructions to be 30 minutes early, but definitely don't be late. And I just want to wish everybody the best of luck in your state exam. Remember, our pass rate is really high. Those students who pass our course are probably over 94% of them end up passing the state exam. So you will be very confident. You will be very well prepared for this exam. Remember, our nursing program will be launching in Cincinnati probably this upcoming year in 2026 is a goal. So keep us in mind if you're not in a huge hurry to start a nursing program. We'll start off with an LPN program that'll go for 10 months, and then we'll have a bridge program, PN to RN. Those of you that maybe a nursing program is too much to chew off at this time, maybe a 6-week medication aid program might suit you better. So we're starting one in January in Columbus, and we should be launching it in Cincinnati as well very soon. So keep us in mind for that. Both of those courses have an entry exam. The PN requires the TEAS test, and the medication aid requires its own 50-question multiple choice. You have to get a 70% or higher on the TEAS for entry, or generally a 70% overall on the TEAS is what we're looking for on a composite score. For the medication aid, it's only a 50-question test, unlike the TEAS, which is 170 questions. We're looking for a 50% or higher for the med aid course. Remember, for the certified medication aid, you're going to be passing narcotic level medications. It's also licensed to the Ohio Board of Nursing, just like the LPN course is, right? Both of those courses, like I was saying, require CPR through American Heart. The next CPR class is going to be the second to last Saturday, which is December 30th in Cincinnati, and December 27th in Columbus. That's the BLS, the Basic Life Support, which is through American Heart, which tends to be the gold standard these days. So I want to invite you all to follow us and stay with us and stay tuned for some good things to come in the year 2026. I want to wish you all the best of luck and thank you all so much. Good luck.